Hey, let's do this. I'm playing today.
Fratelloni's Hardware and Garden Stores brings you Garage Logic podcast number 1303. 92 degrees on this day in 1963, and 27 degrees above in 1885. That was a chilly day.
27 below in May would have been.
That's right. That would have been different. And let me tell you something. 1963 was getting very near the beginning point of the Aquacide products made in White Bear Lake. Aquacide products get rid of weeds and algae and all the other junk you don't want contaminating your swimming area. Aquacide products are easy to use. They work quickly, and they're registered with the EPA and the DNR. There's no needs to let weeds overtake your lake or pond this summer. Call Aquacide today. Explain what you're looking at. They'll get you the right products, and your place will look great all summer long. Call Aquacide at 1-800-328-9350 or go to aquacide.com.
Hail the flashlight king.
And now, from the mayor's office above the boathouse on the east shore of Spoon Lake, it's Garage Logic with Chris Reavers manning Technology Corner, Kenny Olson from the Krabby Coffee Shop, John Heidt in the newsroom, and of course, the rookie. Here is your flashlight king, fireworks commissioner, and the keeper of common sense, your mayor, Joe Sushiro.
What do you got?
I'm on Instagram. I have the Star Tribune and Strib Sports pulled up. The Minnesota Timberwolves at the moment are the best team in the NBA. They need 10 more victories to win a championship and have the right to say that themselves. The rest of us don't have to wait. We can see it. And it goes on to say other things. But see, they're even recognizing.
You see, I walked in today and Rook told me, hey, the Timberwolves, they go 10-9, they win the NBA title. And I thought that was revelatory. I thought, holy mackerel, what a stat. Well, that's math.
How well received was it?
I'm on a family text having to do with sports, and they all expressed concern for me. that
Matthew,
there's also as well.
There's also a family text that he's not included in. Oh, that's the one that's really blowing up right now.
I know what you're saying.
And they're saying things like, I hope you don't use that in your column or anything like that. And the idea that you think that's something to be noted is a bit concerning. In other words, every team that's currently alive in the playoffs can come up with roughly the same statistic.
Give or take a couple games.
So you win 2 more games against Denver, you've won that series.
This is the printout.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, and then you win 4 games in the next series and 4 games in the next series.
That'll put you in the next level.
That's 8. That's 2 and 8 is 10. And then you still would have room to lose 9 times counting this series. And so it wasn't that big of a deal.
No, but it is, and here's why. The point of it is the fact that all they need to do is finish essentially 1 game over 500. And currently in the NBA, they are the only team because they're the only team up 2-0 in the second round.
See?
I love when I
don't know why this is that complicated.
To the table, you know?
You guys have all,
for the first 15 minutes.
Other than John, you guys have lived in this state your entire lives.
And I have something to say about that.
You do realize what is going to happen to this team, don't you? And your hopes and your dreams. You do realize, don't you?
Down.
I'm not going to go there today. I don't believe that. Now, first of all,
lay it down.
I've never been a basketball fan. This team has made me watch them. I think Anthony Edwards is the most entertaining athlete I've seen, much less basketball player. He's right up there.
I'm on the bandwagon.
But the other thing that I would note about the way they're playing, and this was not my original thought, this was a kid on the text, this is the most un-Minnesota-like thing we've ever seen. And then I started thinking of my own analogies. This is the equivalent of Walz walking onto the legislative floor and shaking his finger at the legislators and saying, you're not spending 1 nickel of the $18 billion surplus. Oh, Kenny's shaking his head because he doesn't get it. The point is there's nothing passive aggressive. this. This would be the equivalent of the Minneapolis School Board saying we're done with woke pronouns. This is not the way Minnesota operates. The way they're operating is fierce and
I've got a great analogy.
Horribly competitive. This is unlike anything that Minnesota engages in.
Make a sports analogy. Don't compare this to any kind of politics or any other bullshit.
This isn't the Vikings collapsing in 4 Super Bowls. This isn't the Twins unable to beat the Yankees for 15 straight games.
I'm down with.
How about the Twins though in '87 and '91? Those were fierce competitors. Those were
beat me, but yeah.
This is the equivalent. I'll give you an analogy. This is the equivalent of freshman year in the locker room. Charles Barr walking through the locker room with confidence. Charles walked with confidence.
No towel on.
Yes.
While the rest of you were towel.
Sports analogy.
Swinging.
Well,
they're walking with pride right now.
If you will, that's fine.
Well, I lived through it, so yes.
What site is this, Reavers?
That's
New
the
York Post. Anti-Israel protesters vandalized a World War I memorial in Central Park Monday and burned an American flag after a mob of more than 1,000 marchers was blocked by police from reaching the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where the star-studded Met Gala was in full swing. I wish they would have reached that. At least one America-hating vandal torched Old Glory at the site of the 107th Infantry Memorial, the base of which was defaced with graffiti reading Gaza in large black letters. Others plastered the statue's bronze soldiers with stickers of the Palestinian flag that read "Stop the Genocide, End Apartheid, Free Palestine." Some of the protesters climbed atop the infantrymen and waved Palestinian flags or draped them over the soldier. Trying to turn the page here. Oh, I'm seeing the pictures. Good Lord. Here's the problem, we got to this last week. When you connect all the dots, what these kids destroyed by the failed academy are doing is discovering an outlet for and expressing their disdain for what they've learned in the failed academy, which is they have been disabused of the idea that America is a great country. They have been told that it is not. They have been told that its founding was flawed because the founders were white men. They have been preached about colonialism and imperialism, about which they know very little, but they are mistaking this country for an imperialistic terrorist organization that has swept through the globe and claimed countries for itself, which we have not done. They have found, as I say, they have found an outlet for their, in order to almost justify or live up to all this BS they've been hearing in classrooms. Certainly not all of them. I would hope that the greater percentage of college students has rejected that BS and they're trying to go to school and get their degrees. But many of them, particularly I would imagine those pursuing meaningless degrees, the degrees in things you can't flunk, they have sprung the trap door. They're out now and they're able to live by example what they've been taught. And they've been taught that we're a lousy country. We're unfair. We're too white. We're too patriarchal. And they are able to convince themselves that this is something they should frown upon. And Gaza just happened to come along. It's a matter of timing. It just happened to it could have been anything. And in fact, there are many other examples of suffering, starving people in the world that even take precedence over Gaza, the Uyghurs in China, kids in the Horn of Africa. But Gaza was in the news, and Israel is seen as a white capitalist oppressor society. So that exactly fits the paradigm of what they've been hectored about in the failed academy. And thus you have these kids even wearing the checkered tablecloths on their head to pretend they're identifying with these people. And they are living out the failed academy's proselytizing. That's what they're living out here. And so to put into context, what's a World I statue to them? It's another example of untoward power. It's another example of the U.S. flexing its muscles against the world. Thank God they did, just as thank God we did in World War II. And it is an example of the task this country faces to save itself, to get back on the right path. Because you could write off this crowd. They're never going to be, unless, like Brittany Griner, they all got arrested and had to spend 10 months in perhaps a Russian jail and then get converted, because you'll note Brittany Griner sure as hell now stands for the national anthem. Unless you could do that to all these kids, they're gone. They're gone from the American experiment. They've written it off. Now, some of them might come around over time, but it's unlikely. And so there we have today this news that they've defaced and ridiculed the statue of World War I infantrymen, which has stood in Central Park for 100 years or so. That shouldn't be a surprise to anyone.
Yep. They burned a flag. Do we care about that? It's still against the law.
And burned a flag for which they probably won't suffer any consequences.
Do you suppose any of these kids or the leaders of these kids also took part in the protests over at Columbia?
Oh, absolutely. Sure. And remember, in this lot are professional protesters, trainers that have helped train these kids.
And the leader of the protests at Columbia comes from the finer cut of cloth, doesn't he?
Well, let's see if we can affirm that. Social media erupted in fury as the identity of the person orchestrating the violent anti-Israel demonstrations at Columbia University was unveiled. Shockingly, it turns out he's not just any protester, but someone unrelated to the students, married, and the son of millionaire advertising executives.
A capitalist's kid.
A capitalist. The bombshell revelation sparks outrage across social media, with many questioning the authenticity of the protests and whether they've been funded by hidden agendas. Do we have this guy's name?
Yeah, it's Cody Carlson or Cody Tarlow or James Carlson. Mm-hmm. Take your pick. Mm-hmm. It's one of those. I would go with James Carlson. That's the first one they give.
So a rich white kid pretending to be oppressed.
He's the son of Richard Tarlow and Sandy Carlson Tarlow, millionaire advertising duo that started Carlson and Partners.
All right.
Some of their clients, Revlon, Victoria's Secret, Ralph Lauren, and Neutrogena.
Well, does that surprise anybody? That doesn't surprise me.
No.
So who's he rebelling against? Both his mom and dad are dead, by the way.
They are, huh?
Yeah.
I don't know who I'm looking at a picture of him. I don't know who he's rebelling against. But somehow he's bought the idea that this is a lousy country. And he's going to make sure that he gets his point across.
He has what people would call an estate that takes a team of people to run.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had that.
If may I go back for 1 minute, Kenny, what you said about flag burning? It's not illegal.
Yeah, well, wait a minute. Okay, let's talk about that.
1989 Supreme Court ruled that it's a form of symbolic speech protected by the First Amendment to burn an American flag.
I've got the Cornell Law School up,
Seems to me I
18 US.
remember the court weighing in on this.
Yeah,
In
I'll go
San
with
Antonio.
89.
All right, I'll go with that.
Getting back to the statue, the anarchy near the corner of Fifth Avenue and East 67th Street unfolded with no police in sight as a large police presence had mobilized 15 blocks north at the Met to ensure one of the biggest nights in fashion wasn't crashed by any anti-Israel protesters. Another Central Park monument, the Civil War General William Tecumseh Sherman bronze statue in Grand Army Plaza, was vandalized Monday night. Free Gaza was graffitied in red letters at the base of the memorial, and a Palestinian flag was affixed to its front. The New York Post has just a wealth of photographs of what took place. Earlier in the evening, 24, that's not many in a city the size of New York,
No.
24 anti-Israel protesters were arrested near Madison Avenue and East 83rd Street as a massive swarm of demonstrators marched from Hunter College toward the Met. The crowd was part of a day of rage organized by the Palestinian activist group Within Our Lifetime. They were blocking traffic along Fifth Avenue before the coppers stopped them at East 79th Street Transverse in Central Park. Disclose, divest, we will not stop, we will not test. What would be interesting to know is how much of this Columbia protest leader, this pro who is the scion of rich parents, it'd be interesting to know in his portfolio how much he's invested in companies that do business with Israel. Because I'll bet you there are some. Apple, Google.
Yep.
You have the idea, folks. GLers know what's going on.
Within Our Lifetime is a Palestinian-led community organization that has been building the movement for Palestine in New York City since 2015, is the first thing I found.
And the country they so disdain is really about the only place in the world where they could get away with this.
Yeah. There's a couple of call to action tabs here on their website. Take action, boycott Zionist dates toolkit, the crackdown on Palestine, unveiling the New York PD repression. It's bunk.
Earlier in the evening, several pro-Israel supporters showed up at Hunter College to face off with people they accused of supporting terrorism. All these people are ignorant, uneducated, and blindly following each other. It feels like we're back in World War II, said 17-year-old Jewish Upper East Sider Elena Bakchi. The two opposing sides engaged in screaming matches on the campus while cops warned demonstrators they could face arrest for unlawfully walking in a roadway. You know, this takes me back to, when you go back to October, I remember telling you guys I went out for a walk and I noticed just a tremendous increase in traffic and people clamoring from parking spots in the Cathedral Hill neighborhood in St. Paul. And a couple of people got out of a car and they put on the checkered hats. And I said something innocuous, like, what's going on? Well, it turns out there was a protest at the grounds of the Capitol. And this was before anything. This was shortly after October 7th. And one of these guys, the guy I questioned who had just put on the checkered hat, he wanted to hit me. He wanted to, and I said, well, first of all, pal, I'm a lot older than you. You could handle me in about 2 seconds if you want. And number two, I said, I only asked one question. I said, what about the Jewish dead? This was right after October 7th. Right. They don't want to hear anything about it.
No. And that's what I'm seeing here on this, what did we call it? Within Our Lifetime, their webpage and what they're all about. The Zionists, they're anti-Zionism. We are anti-Zionist. Zionism is a settler, colonial, white supremacist ideology built on the genocide and dispossession of the Palestinian people. Did I say that right? We therefore reject all collaboration and dialogue with Zionist organizations through a strict policy of anti-normalization. The liberation of Palestine requires the abolition of Zionism. Mm-hmm. Interesting.